Billionaire's shocking mockery of his black maid exposes hidden truth. Her amazing reply transforms everything. Hazel's heart sank a little more as she wiped the last remnants of champagne splatters from the pristine marble countertops of the Prescott penthouse. It was an extravagant affair, the kind that dripped with wealth, leaving trails of polished excess in its wake. Inside her mind, however, the thoughts raced, her dreams crowding in like a chaotic palette waiting for a brilliant stroke. She wanted to be an artist, not just a maid, but life had carved a different path. With each flick of her cloth, she imagined the vivid colors waiting for her in the cramped corners of her Brooklyn apartment, vivid colors that told stories untold and dreams unfulfilled. She hesitated, sipping at the well of frustration. This wasn't just about cleaning up after the careless elite. It was about dreams, about freedom, and about the condescension lingering in the air like an unwanted guest. Tonight, she'd watch as Mark Prescott, the ostentatious billionaire, surrounded himself with sycophants, laughing at the art that hung on his walls, pieces snatched from the struggling hands of driven creators like her. But what could she say? What could she do? Oblivion was a familiar bedfellow, and the fear of her own voice trembled within her. Then he found at the corner of the room where she had tucked away her small canvas, an artwork brimming with life and defiance. What is this? A child's project? His laugh echoed, rich and mocking. The voices around him wavered, teetering between amusement and disbelief. Hazel's breath caught in her throat, resentment bubbling hot beneath her skin. What a blatant display of privilege. He didn't see her. He didn't see any of them. She could feel 1,000 simultaneous thoughts clashing inside her mind. Shall I yell back? Am I weak for not speaking up? But somehow, she maintained her composure, her heart clenched tightly with a mix of anger and dignity that it stung, deeper than she cared to admit, and yet a spark ignited. Why should she hide her art from his ignorant gaze? Why should she let his derision dictate her future? She needed to confront this, to take a step towards unmasking the hidden truths of their divided worlds. Days later, engulfed in anxiety and anticipation, she made the audacious choice to invite Mark to her upcoming exhibition, the very essence of her soul captured in strokes of her brush. A flutter of doubt squeezed her ribs. Could she really pull this off? And why was she inviting a man who had belittled her? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The day arrived. The gallery was alive with voices, and the air whirled with uncertainty. Hazel stood hidden in her corner, adrenaline coursing through her veins, her entire body trembling as she readied herself to reveal her world. Around her, friends and fellow artists marveled at her work. With every nod and whispered word, hope and fear intertwined, threatening to spill over. She spotted Mark weaving through the crowd, seemingly oblivious to the emotional tempest brewing within her. As he locked eyes with her across the room, the laughter and chatter faded to silence. She could almost hear the clock ticking in the background, a surreal moment suspended in time. Would he confront his past mockery, or would he retreat back into the well-lit shadows of his privilege? The unspoken challenge hung heavy in the air, and Hazel felt the pressure rise, every eloquent stroke of her canvas shining bright against a backdrop of contrasts. The door swung open, noise spilling into the room, drowning out her moment of truth, and in that split second, Hazel's heart raced, her breath caught. What was about to happen? Would this be the moment she seized? Or would it be the end of her dreams before they ever truly began? Only the energy crackling in the air held the answer. Hazel felt the gravity of her moment shift as the crowd buzzed with excitement, a living entity whose energy could either uplift her or drag her down. She stood rooted in place, her mind racing through the myriad of what-ifs that clawed at the edges of her resolve. The swirls of paint on her canvas felt alive, they beckoned, urging her to soar beyond the confines of doubt. Mark's presence loomed larger as he navigated the gallery, and with every step closer he took, the memories of his sardonic laughter replayed in her mind like an unwelcome refrain. She gritted her teeth, pushing back against the tide of anxiety threatening to drown her. She had made this choice deliberately, driven not only by the desire to prove him wrong but by a deeper longing for self-assertion. The artist in her longed to flourish and scream, "Look at what I can create." The maid inside her whispered fears of judgment and scorn. As Mark approached, she felt each thrum of her heart reverberate through the silence. He didn't realize it yet, but she wasn't just inviting him to an exhibition, she was unveiling the very essence of her identity, the soul that had been obscured under layers of service. The initial act of him mocking her had changed everything. It had opened her eyes to the very denial she had put on like a coat of paint to ward off the chill of reality. "Remarkable," Mark stated, his voice dripping with sarcasm as he examined her work, leaning in as if he had found an exotic artifact. Anger pulsed through Hazel, but she quelled it. "You've truly captured something," he continued, a smirk plastered on his face, his eyes scanning for a weakness to expose, to laugh at again. Hazel took a deep breath, fighting against the waves of insecurity that threatened to pull her back into silence. "What I captured is who I am, Mark," she said, her voice steady, yet firm. It was both a challenge and a declaration, ringing clear above the gathered crowd. Reaction flickered across his face, surprise edging into his posture, the energy shifted, almost imperceptibly, among the bystanders. She could see her friends nodding in quiet support, their trust fueling her resolve. They had witnessed the whispers and seen the looks, they understood what the art meant, a testament to resilience and beauty in adversity. With newfound determination, she stepped closer, inviting him into her world. "Art is not just a pretty picture, it's a voice," she continued, emboldened by the warmth blossoming inside her. "It reflects pain and passion, histories and hopes." The crowd pulsed with newfound energy, captivated by her confrontation. Mark squirmed, the corners of his mouth tightening. The laughter he often wielded now felt like a sword turned against him, and she reveled in the unexpected power surge within her. "You can mock it, but I'm here expressing my truth, not just for you, but for anyone who has ever felt small." As she spoke, Hazel felt layers of fear peel away, each word crafting a palpable air of defiance, but as the spectators leaned in closer, Mark rolled his shoulders back, an imperceptible tightening of defenses. "Well, I suppose everyone needs a hobby," he replied, but now his voice faltered. The ridicule was gone, in its place was caution laced with curiosity. The gallery seemed to hold its breath, and Hazel realized how monumental this exchange was. She was not just addressing him, she was challenging everything he represented: the laughter, the privilege, the arbitrary hierarchies that dictated value based on status instead of merit. Yet even in triumph, a new wave of uncertainty crashed against her. What would this revelation mean for her journey ahead? Had she truly begun to dismantle the fortress of wealth and disdain? Before she could dwell too much on unanswered questions, she caught a glimpse of a familiar face emerging from the crowd, a mentor she hadn't seen in years. The fire of possibility ignited once more within her. As she approached, the murmurs of the gallery faded, drawing her focus solely on this critical moment. Would this unexpected reunion be the catalyst for her next steps, leading her away from the shadows of doubt and towards a path of unimagined opportunity? Hazel felt her heart thumping in her chest, each beat amplifying the uncertainty swirling around her. Her mentor, Lydia, with her distinguished presence and sharp eye for talent, had arrived at the most pivotal point in Hazel's life. The last time they had met, Hazel was still cloaked in self-doubt, prioritizing the expectations of others over her passions. That moment felt like a lifetime ago. "Hazel," Lydia said, integrating warmth with her candid enthusiasm. "You've truly blossomed. I've missed this fire in you." Her eyes scanned the room, infusing the air with a sense of validation that Hazel had long craved yet struggled to accept. "Thank you," Hazel managed, her voice trembling slightly. It was hard to maintain her composure in the face of Lydia's unwavering support. But the world around her still carried echoes of Mark's mockery, the edges of his words lacerating her confidence, leading her to question if this was merely a fleeting moment of bravado. "You've captured so much here," Lydia remarked, gesturing at her art. It's not just about technique, you know that. It's about emotional truth. There's a vulnerability to this work that speaks volumes. How does that feel? Hazel searched for words, her breath caught. The embarrassment of her past role as a maid flared momentarily, igniting memories of being overlooked and underestimated. But standing in front of Lydia, she felt a burgeoning sense of empowerment rising within her, the audacity to own her narrative. It feels like a beginning, Hazel claimed, her voice gaining strength. I'm tired of hiding who I am. I want to translate my life into art, to share my truth. That's the spirit, Lydia said, nodding earnestly. But then her expression shifted, a hint of seriousness piercing through. Have you considered what this means in the larger landscape of your career? The strength in your voice can resonate beyond this gallery. The question hung in the air, inviting Hazel to consider the risky endeavor that lay ahead. Could she propel herself beyond the confines of the gallery and into a world where her art could challenge narratives? Hazarding a glance back at Mark, his facade of indifference now betrayed a mixture of apprehension and intrigue. There was power in authenticity, and it seemed to unsettle him. I'm ready, Hazel replied, almost impulsively, her resolve igniting the fire of self-belief. She had spent too long as a spectator in her life, playing roles that others wrote for her. Now it was time to script her story, paint her own existential canvas. Lydia's eyes brightened. Excellent. We need to strategize. You have a unique perspective that deserves to be seen, and there are channels to explore. It's time to connect with those who can amplify your voice. Hazel's mind started racing through possibilities: gallery exhibitions, artist conferences, networking with influential professionals. Each opportunity felt like a doorway to uncharted territory, offering glimpses of a trajectory she had only dared to dream about before, but with the exhilaration came trepidation. The stakes were higher than mere artistic expression, there was a personal renaissance at risk. She might have to confront not just critics like Mark, but also people unwilling to accept her evolution. As Hazel took a step back to survey the crowd again, this time with a renewed perspective, she felt the fraying edges of her old self. There was a silent promise in this acceptance, a commitment to chase growth and a chance to seize her narrative. But the crowd's unexpected shifts, the mix of faces, some admiring, others bewildered, left her on edge. Had the spark of her new voice reached them yet? Would they embrace this version of her? Each decision felt like a high-stakes game. She was poised at the edge of a precipice, preparing to leap into the unknown. As Lydia spoke about potential connections, Hazel couldn't shake the feeling that every choice could either be a stepping stone towards reshaping her future or a return to the shadows she was so desperately trying to escape. With a rush of clarity, paired with an undercurrent of fear, Hazel wondered, what would be the ultimate cost of transformation? How deep would she have to delve into herself to unearth the truths that lay dormant? She turned back to Lydia, determination etched in her features. I'm in. I want to take this further. But I need help to navigate it all. Lydia's approving smile fueled Hazel's resolve. But just as she prepared to pen her next chapter, a sudden commotion in the gallery broke her focus. Mark's voice, unmistakably louder, cutting through her moment of clarity. The truth behind the art. Or a masquerade? Everyone needs to know. The gallery hushed, eyes turning to Mark as tension hung thick in the air. The stakes escalated, the coming confrontation was inevitable, and Hazel realized that her transformation would not merely be internal. External validation, or the lack thereof, lay just ahead. Would this bold step forward finally clarify her identity, or would it send her spiraling back into the shadows? Hazel stood frozen, the air thick with anticipation as Mark's words sliced through her newfound resolve. The laughter and whispers that rippled through the gallery threatened to drown the fragile empowerment she had just begun to embrace. It was a verbal gauntlet thrown at her feet, one that sought to drag her back into the shadows from which she was emerging. She felt Lydia's hand on her shoulder, a firm but silent reminder of her support. The gallery's shifting gaze felt like a spotlight, each pair of eyes scrutinizing her, waiting for a reaction. The incessant pounding of her heart waged war against her stillness, urging her to respond. In that moment, she realized the magnitude of the transformation she had set into motion. This wasn't just about her art, it was a declaration of who she was and who she was ready to become. Drawing a deep breath, Hazel forced herself to meet Mark's piercing gaze. "The masquerade is over, Mark," she said, her voice steady and resolute despite the disquiet within. "You may believe you know my truth, but I am far more than what you perceive." Each word was a step away from her past and closer to the woman she aspired to be. Mark's expression morphed into disbelief, his facade shattering for the first time as he recoiled slightly. That flicker of uncertainty fanned the flames of her confidence. She had once allowed his mockery to define her, but confronting him now felt like a cathartic release. "You think my art is a masquerade?" she continued, emboldened by the supportive personas surrounding her. "It is born from pain, resilience, and the raw reality of my experiences, the same experiences that you apparently fail to understand." Hazards of self-doubt still loomed in the backdrop of her mind, but Hazel anchored herself with the knowledge that vulnerability was her strength. As she seized the moment, she glanced at Lydia, who nodded ever so slightly, a silent cue to keep going. "Everything I create is for everyone who has felt unseen or unheard. I'm not just a maid, I'm an artist with a voice that deserves to be amplified." A murmur rippled through the gallery, a collective exhale woven with whispers of admiration and surprise. Hazel felt a flicker of triumph light within her. It was exhilarating yet terrifying. This acceptance, this recognition of her journey, contrasted sharply with the shadows of her former self, which followed her quietly, still skeptical of her boldness. Mark's smirk faded, replaced by a furrowed brow, as if he struggled to recalibrate against the tide of her defiance. She reveled in it but knew the moment was merely a turning point, not the destination. "People like you only see what they want to see. Watch me redefine the narrative," she concluded, her voice rippling through the crowd, invigorating the space with a newfound intensity. The words hung in the air, a promise cast in defiance and determination, shifting the atmosphere palpably. Lydia stepped forward, her presence commanding yet inviting. "I believe it's time for this conversation to evolve. We're not merely witnesses, we're participants in the creation of a new dialogue." A round of applause erupted, it echoed through the gallery, but Hazel knew this was just the beginning. In this moment of unity, she felt a rush of clarity. She wasn't alone in this. But the trajectory of her path broadened, bringing with it a new set of expectations and, potentially, new adversities. What would this new path demand of her? Would the acknowledgement from others solidify her strength or give rise to a slew of critics, now agitated by her defiance? As these questions circled, Hazel sensed an impending shift in her reality, the tension of potential weaving through her surroundings. She was standing at the threshold of reshaping not only her art but also her entire existence. As she gathered herself, preparing to further engage with the crowd that now seemed receptive, Lydia interjected with strategic insight, "Let us discuss your next steps. We need to leverage this moment." With that, Hazel felt the weight of new possibilities settle onto her shoulders. It was thrilling but daunting. Here, as she stood with challenges manifesting, her spirit now firmly held by her truth, she realized the battle had only begun. How far would she have to go to conquer her fears and critics alike and, crucially, how would she maintain her authenticity through it all? Each decision loomed larger than before, teetering between craft and courage. She couldn't help but wonder, what would the next confrontation reveal about her journey, and how deeply challenged would she be to protect her truth? Hazel braced herself, aware now that clarity came at the cost of constant confrontation. But would her resolve hold firm when it mattered most? Hazel stepped away from the thrumming applause, her mind racing with uncharted possibilities. The questions that had haunted her not long ago transformed into a fuel for determination. This newfound recognition ignited something deep within her, a passion waiting to be molded into tangible steps. As the murmurs of the crowd began to settle, Hazel focused on Lydia's words, filtering through the excitement in search of actionable insights. "We need to capture this momentum," Lydia urged, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "Now's the time for strategy. Your story has power, and we can leverage that to share your art with a wider audience." Hazel nodded, allowing herself to feel the weight of the support surrounding her. Her thoughts raced as she processed the implications of Lydia's suggestion. She envisioned exhibitions, community workshops, maybe even a collaboration with local artisans. Would her voice blend with others who understood her narrative? Could she spark dialogues that inspired self-discovery and, ultimately, change? "Let us plan a series of workshops," Hazel proposed, the words flowing out with newfound assertiveness. "I want to connect with others, share techniques, share our stories. It's about empowerment through creativity." Lydia's expression transformed into one of approval, a smile breaking through the remnants of what had been a tense moment only minutes before. "That's brilliant. And we can use social media to promote these workshops. Share your process, your journey. It could resonate with so many people." Hazel's heart raced with each idea that sprang to life. She could visualize herself in that space, welcoming others like her, those who felt as if they'd been relegated to the sidelines. Perhaps they could create an online gallery together, a collective showcasing their work, each piece reflecting their resilience and evolution, but amid the excitement lay the echoes of doubt, whispering insidiously in the back of her mind. What if those who once judged her returned to disparage her efforts? Or worse, what if she faltered under the weight of expectations she had suddenly thrust upon herself? "Hazel, what is going on in that mind of yours?" Lydia asked, her gaze probing and open. Hazel hesitated, then forced a smile to mask the turmoil brewing inside. "I'm just thinking about the pressure. What if I fail at this?" "Failure is part of every journey," Lydia countered, her voice steady and reassuring. "The key is to keep moving forward. Every successful person has faced doubt and rejection. It's how you respond to it that counts. Remember, every piece of art tells a story. The same goes for your life." Hazel's contemplative nature wrestled with the nagging fears, weighing them against the rising tide of possibility Lydia had illuminated. The discomfort of vulnerability was still there, yet it felt different. It was no longer tinged with shame, it was an invitation to solidify her voice, to create an impact. "Okay," she said, her own determination aligning with Lydia's unwavering belief in her. "Let us outline those workshops. I want to brainstorm themes around identity, resilience, and self-expression." "Excellent." Lydia beamed, pulling out her phone to jot down ideas. As Hazel watched Lydia's fingers fly across the screen, she felt a renewed sense of direction. It would take bravery to step into the fullness of her new identity, but she understood now that she stood on a foundation built from the belief in her own worth and the support from those around her. Just as they began to delve deeper into planning, the pressure of a familiar presence washed over Hazel. Mark, his aura of condescension unmistakable, approached with an air of feigned indifference. "So, this is your big comeback, huh?" he remarked, his tone laced with skepticism. "Do you really think you can turn this into something meaningful?" In that instant, Hazel recognized the challenge not as a setback but as a test of her resolve. She had come too far to be thrown off course by his derision. Mustering her confidence, she locked eyes with him, ready to elevate the conversation. "Watch me redefine what meaningful looks like, Mark." As the expectation thickened between them, Hazel felt the full weight of her truth pressing on her chest. Each challenge became a brushstroke on her canvas, and she was ready to paint the next chapter of her life with boldness and clarity. But a deeper question settled beneath her resolve: could she maintain her sense of purpose, or would the struggle to carve her own path be more daunting than she anticipated? With every word spoken, she felt the edges of her new identity sharpen. Yet the battle was far from over, and she'd soon be called to confront not just Mark, but her own fears. How much further could she go without losing sight of who she truly was? Hazel spent the following days immersed in preparation. The exhilaration from the applause and Lydia's encouragement provided a steady backdrop to her thoughts, yet the shadows cast by Mark's skepticism lingered. Each time she began to outline the workshops, the echoes of his disdain darted across her mind. What if the initiatives fell flat? Daring to connect creatively with others was one thing, allowing others, especially those who once underestimated her, to witness her vulnerability was another, but as she sat at her table, the blank page before her began to fill. She jotted down themes for the workshop's identity and voice, finding resilience through art, stories of self-discovery. The act of writing became a cathartic release, transforming the anxiety into a plan. She felt the whispers of doubt dull as her thoughts crystallized, giving way to a tangible structure she could build upon, yet, a crucial piece was missing. The theme of what constituted meaningful remained unresolved in her mind. She closed her eyes, picturing the faces of potential participants. Each expression held a story, an echo of their own struggles and triumphs. This was no longer simply about her, it had evolved into a shared experience that transcended her personal journey. Looking out of her window, Hazel saw the world a blend of colors and stories moving past. Perhaps her path could intertwine with theirs, and the act of sharing would blossom into a community of growth. But how did one create such a space? "Hey, how's it coming along?" Lydia asked, interrupting her thoughts. She entered unannounced, carrying a small basket of snacks, a bright smile illuminating her face. "It's getting there," Hazel admitted, her voice wavering slightly. "But I feel like I'm missing something crucial. What truly defines something as meaningful? Let's brainstorm. What do you want these attendees to leave with?" Lydia beamed, unfurling a notepad. For the next hour, their dialogue flowed, fostering a rhythm that harnessed both excitement and dread. Hazel found clarity as they batted ideas back and forth, igniting sparks of inspiration. Each concept explored a deeper layer of what it meant to connect through art. Shouldn't it foster dialogue, provoke thought, challenge stereotypes, and ultimately move people toward healing? Lydia leaned forward. "What about sharing some of your own experiences? Vulnerability invites vulnerability. It could be your starting point." Hazel's heart raced at the thought. To lay bare her journey meant exposing her innermost struggles, the moments of fear where she questioned her path. What if it didn't resonate? But as she looked at Lydia, she recognized the power in her own narrative. Each blemish, each scar was part of the tapestry that defined her. They were threads woven together into a broader narrative, an invitation for others to share theirs. Later that evening, while lying in bed, the conversation replayed, weaving through her thoughts like an old, comforting song. Could she trust the authenticity of her past to guide her forward? It would take bravery to speak freely, to allow the real Hazel to emerge, one who had been marked by experiences, yes, but had transformed those wounds into art. Over the next week, the workshops grew from mere ideas to a calendar of events filled with potential. Hazel began marketing the series, sharing snippets of her thoughts and stories online. Each post was a calculated risk, exposing both her creativity and her insecurities. While she anticipated judgment from some, others responded eagerly, drawn into a narrative of connection and growth. In a small corner of her mind, however, Mark's voice lingered. Each follower added confirmed Hazel's progress, yet a flicker of unease remained. What if her endeavor was met with the same skepticism as before? One evening, as she prepared to finalize the details of the first workshop, an unexpected message pinged on her phone. It was Mark. "Can't wait to see how this goes. Should be interesting," he typed, the tone ambiguous, shrouded in a veil of condescension and mockery. In that moment, Hazel felt the embers of her determination stoke into a blaze of clarity. This was no longer about proving anything to him or anyone else. It was about articulating her story, cultivating her truth, and connecting with those ready to explore their journeys alongside her. As she stared at the screen, a fire ignited within her. The time had come to confront more than just Mark's skepticism. It would be a challenge against all the self-doubt she had carried for too long. Could her workshops transcend mere artistic expression and morph into something transformative? The decision lay ahead of her. Would she soar or stumble? In pursuing her new identity, could she indeed carve a space that was truly meaningful, redefining her narrative on her terms? With every stroke of the keyboard, she felt the past and future converge. The pressure intensified. As excitement swirled within her, Hazel realized that the real work was about to begin. What lay ahead was uncharted territory, and she felt both trepidation and exhilaration chaotically entwined. Mark would be watching closely, but Hazel was ready. The moment of truth was approaching, and the journey ahead promised to be transformative in ways she had yet to imagine. Hazel awoke the next morning with the sun spilling through her window, flooding her room with golden light. It felt different today, charged with possibility. The workshops that had filled her mind for weeks now seemed like tangible reality. Determined to push past her doubts, she crafted a checklist, detailing every aspect of the first session from logistics to materials needed, and a welcome speech that she hoped would set the tone. As she moved through her day, however, a constant rhythm of anticipation thrummed beneath her skin. What if no one showed up? What if she stumbled over her words during that critical first moment? Each question pulled her back into the depths of uncertainty. While she navigated her routine, that familiar specter of Mark's skepticism lurked at the edges of her mind, threatening to extinguish her newly lit fire. Frustrated, Hazel found herself at a local cafe that afternoon, seeking refuge in the aroma of fresh coffee. The ambience chattered with warmth and laughter, grounding her in the mundanity of life outside her swirling thoughts. She pulled out her notebook and began drafting the speech she envisioned delivering. The words flowed until they began to falter, slipping through her fingers like sand. "Hey, Hazel." A voice broke her concentration. It was Clara, an old friend from college. "I was just about to text you. Heard you're doing workshops now. That's amazing." Hazel felt warmth flush her cheeks as Clara slid into the booth opposite her. The disbelief and delight evident in Clara's demeanor lit a spark in Hazel. "Thanks. I'm really trying to create something special, but part of me is terrified it won't come together," she confessed, tracing the rim of her coffee cup. Clara's brow furrowed for a moment, assessing Hazel's expression. "You have to push through that fear." She leaned closer, her voice dropping. "Remember your art. How you once transformed your pain into something beautiful. Those workshops can be your canvas." Clara's validation pierced through the fog of doubt that had settled over Hazel. Perhaps she had been too focused on the what-ifs rather than embracing the transformative nature of her journey. That void had been filled with fear of judgment rather than acceptance of her authentic self. "You're right," Hazel said slowly. "This isn't about them. It's about me being real, sharing my truths." Their discussion dug deep into what Hazel wanted her workshops to achieve. They explored how vulnerability could be an act of courage rather than a defect. As the afternoon slipped into evening, ideas blossomed and tangled, and she found herself invigorated. After parting ways, Hazel returned home, feeling the familiar weight of her notebook pull at her. She poured back into her writing, snatching at threads of clarity from the day. It was exhilarating to think about her personal growth roaring alive in her words, inviting others into their own evolution. But as she picked up her phone, her heart sank. She had avoided checking her social media as the day progressed. A notification from an associate, a comment on one of her posts flashed glaringly back at her. "Art is subjective. What makes you think you can lead anyone in finding themselves?" It felt like another jab from Mark, hauntingly familiar. Hazel's fingers hovered over the screen, torn between responding and retreating. It was tempting to dismiss their comment. She had always struggled with criticism, often internalizing it rather than confronting it. But not today. As clenched fists relaxed, she felt clarity. This was struggle's shared experience, and she recalled Clara's words. Taking a breath, she began to respond, and as she did, a new realization began to emerge, a resolve. She was not merely inviting judgment but fostering growth in conversation. She was not just a voice, she was a bridge for those yearning to be heard. The next morning, Hazel rearranged her checklist. She replaced notions of self-doubt with affirmations of purpose. "I will be the catalyst for connection." But just as she set her plan into motion, another message chimed. "In from Mark, I'm curious to see if your workshops stick. I wonder how long you'll last." A challenging provocation, or perhaps an incentive? Hazel felt the stirrings of resolve bubble with frustration, blazing through her fear. In confronting Marquez's cynicism, she sensed a deeper challenge: her stability, the faith in her voice and narrative. Today would not just be about preparing for others, it would be a personal reckoning with herself. Would she allow the skepticism to determine her journey, or would she redefine her limits? As she locked eyes with her reflection in the mirror, she saw something new: a woman ready to embrace the unknown. With her breath steadying, Hazel understood that with every message, every workshop, she was building her identity. The fear wouldn't disappear, but she could learn to dance with it rather than retreat. The moment approached, and she was ready to rise unfiltered and unwavering. Determined, Hazel stepped beyond the threshold of doubt, igniting her purpose in ways that would invite not just connection but authentic dialogue. Could she redefine the expectations not only of others but of herself? The journey was alive, that much was already certain. But ultimate transformation lay ahead, lingering just out of reach, demanding she uncover her most vulnerable truths. Would she emerge empowered or hesitant, standing at the crossroads of her own potential? As dawn broke, Hazel found herself brimming with an urgency that pulsed through her every movement. Standing by her window, the crisp morning air filling her lungs, she sensed an undeniable shift within herself. Today wasn't just any other day, it was the day of her first workshop. Each tick of the clock felt like an electric pulse driving her forward, and as she went about her morning routine, she could hear Clara's voice echoing in her mind, urging her to embrace her fears and transform them into strength. With her checklist meticulously organized and her speech tucked in her bag, she stepped outside, allowing the outside world to wash over her like sunlight. A flurry of thoughts consumed her: how would the participants respond? What if she faltered? Yet each anxious thought was met with a newfound clarity. This was no longer solely about her fear of failure but a larger commitment to being a catalyst for others' transformation. Arriving at the venue, the space was smaller than she had imagined, but it felt fitting. Familiar yet unknown, it thrummed with the potential of what was about to unfold. As she set up chairs in a circle symbolically inviting connection over hierarchy, Hazel felt each movement serve as both a grounding ritual and a proclamation of her intentions. This would not be about her showcasing expertise, it was about allowing everyone, including herself, to explore their own depths. Participants began to trickle in, and with each phase she recognized some old friends, some strangers. Her heartbeat quickened. The nervous flutters now danced with excitement. She welcomed each person with warmth, making eye contact that transcended casual greetings. As the last few settled in, a mix of familiarity and anxious energy buzzed in the air. When it came time for Hazel to speak, she felt a momentary flash of uncertainty. The spotlight of attention shifted her focus inward. What if she stumbled over her carefully written speech? But as she began, unfamiliar words spilled forth from her consciousness, a story woven together by threads of vulnerability and courage. My journey has taught me that art isn't merely a thing to create but a lens we share with one another. It's in our shared experiences that we find healing, she remarked, drawing on the discussions she'd had with Clara. Each story she shared carried the essence of her struggles with self-doubt, the biting critiques of others, and how those hurdles shaped her core. As she led into the first activity, a guided reflection exercise, barely concealed hesitations from her audience resurfaced. One participant, John, a man with a heavy brow and folded arms, challenged her with a direct question: what makes your story worth telling? Everyone has their struggles. Why should we share ours? Hazel's heartbeat quickened, but instead of flaring up her defensiveness, she confronted it with intention. Because our stories, each unique, become pathways towards understanding ourselves and each other. By sharing, we weave our collective narrative, illuminating the shadows we each hold, she answered, locking eyes with him. As her words hung in the air, a sense of connection energized the room. In that exchange, a realization settled over Hazel: this was her platform to explore complexities, not merely share triumphs. The discussions that followed, filled with hesitations, laughter, and palpable fear, morphed into a candid exploration of their vulnerabilities, crackling with authenticity. As the session wound down, she felt an aching pull in her chest, a kind of bittersweet longing to stretch the time they had together. She realized that each participant was a mirror reflecting her own journey, a collective evolution. But just as she prepared to wrap up, an unexpected message from Mark blinked onto her phone, shattering the raw connection she had fostered moments ago. "Hope you enjoy your little circle of whispers. Do you think talking about feelings changes anything?" Hazel's heart raced as the words rattled through her resolve. It struck her how deeply ingrained Mark's skepticism remained, attempting to cast shadows over her newfound purpose. Who was he to question the transformative power of vulnerability? Closing her eyes, she inhaled deeply, grounding herself in the feedback and energy exchanged today. Suddenly, Hazel understood it wasn't just about her transformation, but about standing steadfast against critical shadows. Her journey was unfolding, and with a newly minted sense of tenacity, she responded. "Change starts with honest conversations. And today we planted the seeds for that growth." But as she hit send, a new realization sparked. Sharing those moments of vulnerability could invite critics, yes, but they could also build connections. What would she do with that feedback coming from skeptics? Would she continue to engage, challenge, and grow? With every willing participant, she understood a door had opened not just a connection for others, but a deeper invitation for herself. The whispers of doubt still lingered, but she sensed the potential to turn them into a chorus of empowerment. As she gathered her things to leave, Hazel glanced back at the space full of laughter and connection, buzzing with the genuine exchange of stories. The challenge was clear: how would she sustain this momentum? How would she confront the impending tide of external doubt that followed her, and could her workshops evolve beyond the first session? Every step she took resonated with purpose. And as she prepared to leave, the ripples of what was to come beckoned her forward into the unknown. A wild exhilaration built as she pondered one thought: what did it mean to embrace her voice not just in circles of comfort, but against the criticism that followed? Would she choose to confront or retreat? The following days rolled on like waves, each one pressing Hazel further into an exploration of her identity as a facilitator and a person. While moments of exhilaration filled her spirit, the shadow of Mark's skepticism loomed, a black cloud contrasting with her vibrant intentions. Each time her phone buzzed, a spark of anxiety shot through her. Would it be another sardonic message? Collecting her emotions became a daily ritual. In the mornings, she practiced affirmations in front of the mirror, each word brushing against the incredulity she still felt. "My voice is powerful. I am worthy of sharing my story," she would repeat, yet the words sometimes seemed to bounce back at her, teasing her resolve. The thrill of her workshop had electrified her, but the darkness of doubt kept nudging at her, attempting to cloud that light. One afternoon, as she sat in her tiny home office, scattered notes and abandoned sketches outlining future workshops, Hazel received another message from Mark. "Your workshop was cute, but I stand by what I said. Feelings don't pay the bills." That unexpected poke made her heart sink. It stung, reverberating through her entire being like a discordant note in an otherwise harmonious song. But rather than retreating, that sharp jab ignited a fire beneath her skin. Why did she allow Mark, someone far removed from her world, to dictate her worth? She leaped to her feet, her thoughts racing. This was her moment to turn this hurtful message into fuel for her next session. Without overthinking, she began drafting a new activity that would focus on dismissing external negativity and embracing self-empowerment. The next workshop approached rapidly, and Hazel was determined to push boundaries further. She shared snippets of her journey in confronting insecurities, weaving in how toxic skepticism could be redirected into motivation. "When faced with resistance, let it sharpen your resolve," she stated. "Let it be a tool that chisels your identity rather than a stone that weighs you down." Participants listened, captivated by her newfound assertiveness. The discussion opened up like a flower in bloom, and as they delved into their experiences of doubt and negativity, Hazel felt a renewed sense of purpose emerge within her. She fostered an exchange that asked the group to confront their critics not just with retorts but with empowered narratives of their own truths. Among her participants was a young woman named Lila who revealed her struggles with familial disapproval. "They don't understand what I want to pursue," she shared, her voice trembling as if each word were a stone dropped into still water, creating ripples of vulnerability. Sometimes, I wonder if I should just listen to them. Hazel felt an instant connection. To be questioned is a universal experience. But what if their doubts only reflect their limitations? She prompted, drawing the group's attention. Your pursuit does not need their approval to be valid. What you desire can exist without their understanding. As Lila nodded slowly, Hazel sensed her own conviction being mirrored back to her. Each exchanged story lightened the load of doubt, transforming it into something tangible, an opportunity for resilience. The space thrummed with energy, and Hazel felt herself lifting, buoyed by the silent pact taking shape. They would all walk their paths, empowered by their vulnerability rather than diminished by it. But just as the meeting was coming to a close, Mark's voice echoed in her mind, unwavering and taunting. She couldn't brush him aside. Could her workshops truly thrive in the face of external criticism? What lay ahead when the adrenaline of empowerment faded? As participants filtered out, one gaunt man approached her. Thomas, a quiet soul she'd barely seen participate. Your workshops, they really shift things, he stated hesitantly. But how do you know when you've really changed? Is it enough, just because we feel differently? The question pierced through her momentarily grounded state, tugging at her certainty. How would she know when she had arrived at some definitive point of change? Would she be able to measure it amid the chaos of life's uncertainties? With each footstep mingling with doubt, Hazel realized this was not merely a transition, it was a constant evolution. She stepped forward, threading her resolve into the next conversation, determined to face the many facets of her journey ahead and acknowledge the anxiety that accompanied it. Every session inched her closer to discovering authenticity in the face of resistance and the weighty expectations of others. But embracing change held its own complexities. The looming question lay heavily: could she actively choose growth, even when faced with the discomfort of inevitable skepticism? As she locked eyes with Thomas, anticipation curled in her mind. A new idea began to form, one that would push her even further into confrontations she had avoided. What would it mean to open workshops to the very critics she sought to challenge? As the days turned into weeks, Hazel felt her determination crystallizing into a palpable essence. Each workshop had transformed into a space of rich dialogue, growing not only her own skills but the community that had gathered around her. To confront the past and challenge the present was exhilarating, but the shadows of doubt still flickered at the edges, especially Mark's dismissive remarks haunting her thoughts. At night, she would lie in bed, her mind whirring to recall moments of connection during the workshops, how participants opened up, shared stories, and found strength in vulnerability. But Mark's cutting words still echoed, demanding acknowledgement. Feelings don't pay the bills, he'd said, but Hazel no longer wanted her worth defined by someone else's perception. One afternoon, after another invigorating session, Hazel sat alone, writing in her journal. Thoughts swirled around building a bridge for those still trapped inside their struggles. What if she invited critics into her workshops? It was an audacious thought, one that resonated with both fear and excitement. The idea could challenge their assumptions head-on and create discussions around difficult topics: privilege, resilience, and the perspectives that divided them. The following week, she crafted a bold invitation, addressing it to those like Mark, the naysayers who doubted the power of creativity and emotion. Join us for an open dialogue on growth through vulnerability, she would say. Let us explore the narratives that shape us. It was a risk, but she felt the weight of her own truth would guide the conversation. The day arrived, and Hazel stood before the mirrored wall of the community room, her heart racing at the prospect of opening the space to skepticism. The familiar apprehension tickled her spine, but there was no turning back now. She visualized her mentors: Lydia's steady guidance, Clara's unwavering belief, and the lingering support of her workshop participants. They believed in her, and now she had to believe in herself. As participants filtered in, the tension in the room was palpable. Eyes darted around, unsure of what to expect. Then Mark walked in, his expression ambivalent, a flicker of curiosity mixed in with his habitual disdain. Hazel took a deep breath, feeling the gravity of her decision anchor her. Welcome everyone, she began, her voice resonating with newfound authority. Today, we're challenging the narratives we've lived under. Let us engage and be honest about the fears and expectations we've battled. She took a moment to lock eyes with Mark. Feelings do matter. They shape our realities. Let us explore that. The atmosphere shifted as she encouraged everyone to share their stories. Surprisingly, Mark spoke up. But isn't vulnerability just a path to weakness? He interjected. The collective gasp from the attendees felt like an electric jolt, but Hazel steadied her resolve. This was the confrontation she had devised, and she wouldn't back down. Vulnerability is a strength, she countered, her voice steady. It is the catalyst for growth. When we embrace it, we reclaim our power. The room became animated as discussions flowed. Mark challenged and questioned, but the responses from Hazel and the other participants began to form a tapestry of resilience. Mark's veneer of superiority cracked as he listened to stories from those he previously dismissed. Each tale became a brushstroke against the canvas of his privilege that he could no longer ignore. Hours passed, filled with honest exchanges, until Hazel felt a shift in the room, a collective realization that transcended skepticism. Mark, overshadowed by the shared narratives, looked contemplative, compelled to confront his own biases. That evening, as people departed, a transformation was taking place not just in the eyes of the critics, but within Hazel herself. As she stood amidst the remnants of energy that filled the space with laughter and authentic connections, she realized she held power far beyond her past. I never understood before, Mark admitted, a new humility in his tone as he approached her. You've changed the narrative today, Hazel. In that moment, Hazel felt the weight of her journey, the years of service, the mockery, and the self-doubt lift away. She had done more than host workshops, she had established herself as a voice, a facilitator of growth, inspiring people to recognize their value. Even critics like Mark. Leaving the venue, she stepped into the cool night air, a confident smile spreading across her face. She envisioned future workshops where passion and conflict intermingled, urging all to confront their shadows. Hazel was no longer just the maid with dreams, she had embraced her identity as an artist and a leader. This was the moment she had been waiting for, not just to transform herself, but to transform others through shared experiences. The critics would remain, but now, she had the clarity and courage to redefine her narrative. It was time to paint the contours of her life with boldness. This was her masterpiece. Now it's your turn. Remember, you need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending below. What do you think Hazel will do next? Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Let us spread the inspiration.